Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Friday. Happy Friday, June the 1st, 2018, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, your second daily dose of happy for the day. Thank you for spending this time with us. We love having you, especially you new listeners who have been finding us partly through the ebook and just partly because new listeners find us. And so I want to make it a practice of making sure we recognize you because we're glad that you've come on board and joined the happy club we have here because we have a lot of happy listeners too. And,
I like that. We have a happy club. You've never said that before. I kind of like the sound of it.
Well, you know, it's the Daily Dose of Happy. Of course it's got a happy club. It has to, doesn't it? I mean, it's kind of like in the bylaws, I think.
There we go. We're a happy club. Yeah, so anybody who's joined us, just know that as of now, we're a club.
We're a club, yes. And you are now a member of the club. Congratulations.
Love it, love it, love it.
So how's your day going? I mean, it's a Friday. It can't be bad, I'm sure. So how's it going?
Well, it's not. I mean, it can't be bad. You're right. Plus, I'm off of work, so that makes it doubly special fun. And well, do you want me to just kind of jump into my project?
Sure.
X sort of what? Well, I don't even know if it's one of my projects, but anyway.
Well, this is going to be Project Miscellaneous then.
There we go. Project M for miscellaneous. So as you know, I've said a gazillion times, one of my favorite things to do when I don't have to wake up with an alarm clock, I like to just lay in bed and see kind of what floats through my thoughts. And this morning when I woke up, I kind of had this feeling. You know how I like to give guttural sounds because sometimes I don't know what to call them. Just kind of like a low-key And this morning I went, you know what? I've been waking up lately with this. Like, I don't know if it's been 3, 4, 5 days. You know, even when I take a nap, it's like when I wake up, there's just kind of this dull, And so today, because it had been going on, I finally had the presence of mind to go, I need to explore this because I don't like waking up with, I like waking up feeling great. And I like waking up with everything in my world is going well for me. You know, all is
absolutely.
good. That's my normal kind of waking up.
Well, it's the kind anybody wants, I think.
Right.
I mean, really, when you come down to it. So, sorry.
Well, and you know, what I've learned from Abraham is whenever you start the morning and you're not in a really great place, it's because you've dragged something from the day before or from previous times into your morning. And for me, it's like I did it so quick, you know, most people wouldn't even realize that I didn't really wake up with that feeling because we really do wake up with a positive feeling. It's just that sometimes we can drag the past into our present so fast that we don't even catch where the good feeling was. And so that's kind of what I noticed. It's been several days that I haven't felt the really good feeling, and I've had to work my way towards it.
Huh.
So this morning, I just kind of asked, okay, what is this feeling? What does it feel like? Can I put an emotional feeling word to it? And this is what I do sometimes with my clients that go, I don't know how to describe it. I'll do your best, you know, mad, sad, glad, a feeling word.
Right.
And so the word that came to me, which I have to say, I can't even tell you the last time I actually used this word. The word was dampening.
Dampening.
Dampening. Dampening.
Okay. Different.
And I went, dampening? And I kind of went, is that really it? And I kind of got yeah, that's what it feels like. I went, okay, Wendy, so give me more. What more does this feel like? And I'm like, dampening does feel right because it feels like whatever goodness is going on in my world, I've somehow put a damper on it, somehow to like squish it down so that the fullness of the joy that is normally in my world can't really be experienced or felt.
Wow.
Went, well, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, well, obviously, if I'm sensing this dampening, I know that's not how my inner being is seeing my world, but this is something I'm dragging into the present. And because I know kind of the process, I'm also aware this stuff pops up because it's a piece of resistance that wants to be acknowledged and reconciled so that it no longer is taking this form.
Okay.
And, you know, like I've said many times before, in the process of like whatever you're desiring to create, if you stay focused on it, you don't have to worry about going and find any pockets of resistance that might be in the way. They will always come to the surface on their own. And so that's kind of what I recognized. Now, I didn't know which thing I was desiring this was, around, but I just went, let's just follow it and see where it takes me. Now, this morning, I have to say, was most unusual in that, for me, even though I get great insight and I start to see how it comes in certain ways, I love it when it changes form or when it starts creating something new and I get a deepening of an understanding. So you know how I've been saying lately, how when a memory just pops in my head like out of the blue, that's my signal for my inner being saying, whatever that memory signified or felt like, or the lesson I learned, that's applicable here. Well, I'll be honest with you, when you're kind of in that not totally awake zone, there's no way you can recall every single thing that you thought because they just flash so fast.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, I'm lucky if I can remember anything that early.
I won't be able to tell you everything that went through my head, but I can probably pick out a couple things and kind of illustrate them. But I had a conversation, I guess, with my inner being, and the responses came almost, I would say, every one in the form of a memory, a jingle from a television commercial, a specific line from a movie, something that somebody has said often enough that I attribute it to, I learned that from Tony Robbins.
Wow.
But it wasn't like a typical conversation like you and I have where we go back and forth.
Yeah.
This was a conversation with my inner being where I'd ask a question and I'd get a memory, a phrase, a jingle, and then I'd hear that and go, wow. And then I'd ask the next question and I'd get another jingle, phrase, or sentence from someplace. It was really fascinating. And I realized I started this around 8:30 this morning. And when I finally decided I'm getting up, it was 11:30. So this kind of went on for 3 hours.
Yeah.
I think I fell asleep sometimes in between, but it felt such like a lucid dream that it never felt like I truly went back to sleep. I did have my phone alarm going off. I had to do something for my mother and I just, hit snooze and turned that off. And so I had a couple alarms go off. So there were things that literally woke me up, but then I didn't want to lose where I was at in this process. So I'd immediately, kind of close my eyes and go back into it. But back to this idea of dampening, as I was asking questions, I was getting some insight. And again, can't tell you the phrases and jingles and whatnot that specifically popped up. But the understanding I was getting was I was still playing too small. And it wasn't that I didn't want to play bigger, but that I felt blocked. I felt afraid. And so as I was asking more questions, like, why is it I can't go bigger? There was just kind of this understanding of, because maybe asking for what I really want is beyond the universe's ability to deliver. And I don't want to be disappointed. And so I was like, whoa, this is interesting. And so some of the things that have been in my environment lately is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was on last week. And, that's one of my favorite movies. And so I, hit record. And the other day I watched it. And my favorite scene is the very, very, very end. And I replayed it 3 times. And this is one of the things that came to me this morning. And it was very significant. And it's when Charlie is in the elevator with Grandpa Joe and Willy Wonka. And they bust through the glass ceiling of Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory.
Right, yeah.
And the beautiful music is playing that gives you this sense of awe and wonder. And Willy Wonka, says to Charlie, I'm going to give you this chocolate factory. Is that okay with you? And he's like, of course he was like, he had no words. And Willy Wonka goes to hug Charlie, and while he's hugging him, he says, Charlie, do you know what happened to the boy that got everything he ever wanted? He lived happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the phrase that kept going through my head this morning. Except I'm the boy, but call me the girl,
Well, that's all right.
It's like, do you know what happens to the girl that gets everything she's ever wanted? She lives happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that is my inner being telling me. Okay, let me pull this apart. Because I've watched this movie a million times, because I've loved that phrase so very much, I have always focused on living happily ever after. What I never focused on until today was, do you know what happens to the girl that gets everything she's ever wanted? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my inner being saying I can have everything I've ever wanted. I can truly have everything I've ever wanted. And that was kind of an amazement to me, because that's where I've been afraid to truly believe I can have everything I've ever wanted. Because that's where I'm like, well, what if my wanting is so big that the universe can't deliver it because my expectations are just like ridiculous? And I really feel like my inner being was saying, let that idea go, because that's not the way we think. And if you can desire something, you can have it just the way you desire it. And then, of course, you'll live happily ever after, but you can have what you truly want. And I went, oh my God, that I don't know about you, but that feels so big to me.
Oh yeah. I think you've very nicely summarized what the fears are that we all experience. We delve into this law of attraction stuff. We read up. We practice it. We stumble. Sometimes we get it right. Sometimes we get a result that we're looking for. Sometimes we don't. And we're trying to figure out. We're swimming our way through this thing, and in the back of our minds, there's what you just described, that fear that in some way we're going to be disappointed. This is not real or something, or something is going to just kind of leave us by the side of the tracks and like, haha, I was fooling you. It's not real. There's that fear. It's back there, and that's what you were dealing with. That's what makes it such an interesting story.
And so specifically, I don't think I had that dampening feeling when it comes to Project X, which has to do with my career. I feel like that feels pretty solid to me. Like pretty much everything I've ever wanted in the area of my career, I see that coming to pass. I feel aligned to that. But specifically, this had to do with what I haven't yet labeled, but I'll now call Project R for relationship. I've been thinking, remember a couple weeks ago, I told you on eHarmony, out of the blue, I haven't had one person reach out to me in like over a year. And then I got 4 within a week.
Right. Yeah.
And I asked my inner being, like, what's this about? This feels like a message in a big way.
Yeah.
And what I really got was my man channel is open. I am tuned to the vibration of being open to having a relationship and having somebody walk in that door. I was like, okay, that's cool. And I knew it didn't have to do with meeting someone on eHarmony. Why? Well, because I don't want to meet someone on eHarmony. I know that sounds weird.
Well, no, that's reasonable. That's a reasonable request. Why should you be forced to accept it from a channel you don't want? Of course.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, I'm on this dating site, but I really don't want to meet anyone on the dating site. So the question then is, why are you on the dating site? And for me, it's because I've learned so much about me in terms of what I'm looking for and what's important to me and how you can tell when somebody's on the level. That's what eHarmony is. It's like an experimental space for me.
Oh, I see. Okay. It's a sandbox.
But I have a huge desire to meet someone in person, where when we meet each other, we can see what we look like. We can immediately feel each other's energy. Because I've always been a person that I can tell, like, instantaneously if I connect with someone or not when I see them. And then once they start talking, that's what locks it in. And so dating apps don't do that for me because they don't meet the criteria that really helps me know if it's the right chemistry or not. And so,
Well, how could
anyway,
they? I mean, they're an app. I mean, you're not going to be in a physical presence. You're going to be in the presence of an app. So, yeah, it would not be possible for
well,
an app to do that.
but see, some people, they can text with each other and get a read. That's just not the modality that works best for me.
Yeah, that's fine.
For me, it's being someone in person. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's what the eHarmony thing's about. But I knew my man channel was open. And so that's been exciting to me. Well, so I've been thinking about what it would be like to have a relationship. And, okay, I've made it clear whether I ever get married or not, that is not significant, but I'd like to be in a monogamous relationship. And I was just thinking about, okay, would I want to live with them? Probably, whether my house or his or together, however we do it. And I've been thinking about when you live with somebody, we each bring all of our idiosyncrasies to the table.
That's true.
Some people like the toilet roll to go over, and some people like it under. Some people have a real deal over it, and some people don't care. And I know that because when I was at my sister's for her daughter's graduation this week, we were talking about what my other sister had gone in and changed out the toilet paper holder while she was in there. And I laughed and I said, "And did you make it an under or an over?" She goes, "Over, like duh." And the sister who owns that house said, "Duh, that's the only way." I said, "Oh no, I'm an under." She's like, "Why would you be an under?" I said, "Under just works better for me." So anyway, I was thinking how funny that is, but yet those are the kinds of things, even though they're so little, can get under someone's skin. Because in my own house, if somebody has changed the toilet paper roll holder in my house and they make it an over, I immediately change it to an under.
Well,
now,
you'd go crazy.
You'd
go absolutely crazy in our house because we don't even put a toilet roll on the little rack there. It sits on the sink. It's like standing there, a standalone roll.
No, that's okay. One of my bathrooms has a basket. Yeah, one of my bathrooms has a basket with toilet paper in it. Another one has like a paper towel holder on the counter, so they're stacked up. But so that's not a problem.
We talk on some of the strangest things on this show. You realize that we're talking about toilet paper. I mean, come on.
But these are the things that can get under someone's skin. And then there's, are you messy? Are you neat? Like while I cook, I clean as I go. Some people make a gigantic mess. And I got to tell you, when I walk into a gigantic mess, when someone says dinner's ready, it almost just completely unnerves me. Because I have to literally sit at the kitchen table with my back to the kitchen so I don't see the mess behind me. And then as soon as dinner is over, no matter how tired I am, I will do all the dishes because I want it clean, because I'm really a neat freak, And so anyway, this all comes down to a man plan. A man in my life, if we are so very different, that could be really difficult. Now, I felt pretty lucky with my ex-husband because even though he was pretty opposite of me in a lot of ways, he accommodated me nicely. Like he'd say, if that bothers you, I won't do that. Or if it bothers you, you do it. His office was always a disaster, but it was contained in one room. And
it was
the rest
a contained
of the house,
disaster.
Yes, it was contained mess, and I could handle that. And so I just started thinking about, I haven't been in a relationship in a long time. Who knows what could happen? And if somebody's a complete disaster in terms of those little idiosyncrasies, that could be a real problem for me. Now, it doesn't mean I can't ever change, and this is going to get back to my point. I have feared that I would not be able to be connected with somebody who I connected with so fully that there weren't idiosyncrasies that drove me up the wall. And I can almost hear other people saying, what does it matter? Well, it matters a great deal to me. And if I get what I truly want, not only will the relationship have great synergy in all sorts of areas such as spirituality and philosophy and our values, but also these little things about, what are our habits? Is he late to everything? Or does he want to always be early to everything? I like to be just on time and running a little bit like, ooh, let's get there quickly so we can be on time. But, if somebody says, I want you ready 15 minutes before we really have to leave just because, am I willing to adjust? I don't know, probably. But I don't know if I'm making myself really understood here, but there are idiosyncrasies that to me can make or break a relationship, like in bed.
You're making it clear. And I would even add, well, I mean, first of all, you made a comment that I wanted to touch on really briefly. You talked about how it matters. And when you said that, I realized there's actually two meanings to that. Because on the one hand, the more obvious one is it matters because I think it matters because it's important to me. But the less obvious one, the more LOA one is I think it, therefore it becomes matter. It matters. I'm thinking, whoa, that's really wild. You got both feelings going on there at the same time. But of course it matters because it matters to you. That it's your life you're talking about. So what matters to you is primary.
And, sometimes we hear this talked about and sometimes, people just kind of don't discuss it because it's, the bedroom. But I get hot real easily at night. And if somebody else was a cold person and needed 12 covers on them and couldn't tolerate the temperature that I keep my temperature pretty cold in the house, that to me could make or break a relationship. Or at least they have to be sleeping in a different room. Well, to me, I don't like that idea. Some people have no problem with that at all. But those are the kinds of things that are really important to me. And they're the things that are like the little teeny nitpicky things. And as much as I don't think I've ever talked about this out loud, even with a friend, but I have been concerned that I won't get everything I want in a relationship because of these little nitpicky things I'm talking about. And that will be the stuff that just really is unnerving to me. And today, I really felt like what I was being told was, of 7 billion people on the planet, Wendy, there is somebody that matches you so completely that you're both going to love the air conditioning on at night, chilling you both out. You are both going to be neat freaks. You're both going to like the toilet paper going under when necessary. You're both going to clean in the kitchen as you go. But, and I don't literally mean it has to be every one of these things, but I'm just saying that we fit together so well. And something that one of my girlfriends, she's now been married, I think, about 20 years. And she told me, she said, my husband and I have never had an argument. I mean, doesn't that seem just completely wild? She said, we disagreed.
It depends what you mean by an argument. I mean, that's one of those words that can mean a couple different things.
She said, we've disagreed, but we've never fought over it. We've never had harsh feelings over it. We've never gone to bed angry. She said, we can always find a space where we can find a place of agreement to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, I have such a big personality that, I tend to fall for people who have big personalities like me. If they're passive, it just doesn't work. So for me, it's kind of like what comes part and parcel with having a big personality that knows their mind, is authoritative, and can be somewhat stubborn. Lots of fighting occurs, or at least there's the, well, that's not what I think. Well, it's what I think. And I like to stay in the room until we work it out. But I've also been in relationships where the other person couldn't do that and they would have to leave the house because they'd get so angry. Well, that was a problem for me. That I call that a fight, and so when I'm listening to my girlfriend who's talking about, yeah, my husband and I have actually never had an argument. I'm like, I want that. I want to have a relationship where there can be such a level of communication that even if one person says, you know what, I need to walk away and think on this, but I'll come back when I'm feeling better or get myself back into alignment, I can live with that. I'm not unreasonable. But those are important things to me. And I kind of got this sense, like other people, they go from one relationship to another, and that's never been me. I've been kind of like one and stick with it for a long time and then go a long period of time without one. And I was kind of getting this understanding that I'm not truly satisfied unless I have something that really, really is a good match. I mean, a really solid good match and can last a good long time. And so I was kind of getting this sense that's why I don't get a ton of dating action, because I would probably say no to most of them. And so I want only the one that law of attraction handpicks for me, because all the bells and whistles that match my bells and whistles are ready to roll. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, I'm still trying to unravel one piece that you said
Okay.
because, and I'm not even sure I can verbalize it because whenever stuff comes at me and I feel like there's a contradiction or something that fights the other or whatever, the first thing that usually happens is that my brain starts to melt, and so now it's a question of trying to regain, the position again. So
while the air conditioner on your brain.
Yes, I need the air conditioner turned. Okay, let's crank it up here. Okay, no, but I'm not sure if I could even piece it together, but I will do the best I can. On the one hand, you were talking about how you like a strong relationship where the two of you go at it and you're if there's a disagreement you stay in the room and so forth, and then you flipped over to, well, it's okay if he leaves the room and it's okay if it's like I was hearing two signals there, and I wasn't sure how to reconcile that.
Oh, sure. I said I like somebody with a strong personality that matches my strong personality. And I'm totally okay if we have words or if we seem like we're on opposite ends. But what has been in the past disconcerting to me and didn't work for me was when somebody just leaves. In other words, I've had it where, somebody goes, I'm out of here. I have to leave the house. I'm getting in the car. I need to cool down. And I don't know what that means. But if somebody says, you know what, I can see I'm really not in a space of alignment right now for us to continue this conversation, and let me just kind of step aside so I can get myself centered again, and I'll come back when I'm ready to talk about it. That to me is good open communication. But what I've had in the past is where those words were not spoken. The person just literally turned, bolted, and left. And I never knew when they were coming back.
Okay.
And so I like somebody who's willing to, I like someone who's willing to communicate, because I've been known to say, you know what, it doesn't look like we're getting anywhere with this. Maybe we should just put a bookmark in it and come back when we're both in a little calmer place.
Which is a good idea, usually.
Yeah, that's totally acceptable. But I want someone who's willing to communicate even through the rough space versus what I've had in the past, which is where they just bolted. And it left me going, what just happened? Will they ever come back? Are we ever going to talk about it again? And oftentimes when that person did come back, I'd say, can we talk about it now? And he'd go, no, because if we talk about it now, I'll just get angry all over again. And so literally certain hot topics never got discussed because this person couldn't handle pushing through his own stuff.
See, that to me is a different thing. I mean, I can understand. I understand what you're saying about how you like to have that good communication about I need to have some space, blah, 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 rather than just I can't handle this right now. I got to walk out. I get your distinction there. To me, it's not one that would bother me, but I understand it. But I think that's a long cry from I can't ever talk about it. That to me is where the real problem is. But that's just my perspective on it.
Well, and I've had relationships where there were certain topics that were just off limits and they couldn't ever be talked about, but yet they were very pivotal to the essence of the relationship. And that didn't work for me. Anyway, that gets me up on another topic. But anyway, I was really sensing, a lot of this had to do with a relationship for me. But I also recognized it was also a more global thing. This dampening feeling that I've had has been kind of an overall feeling that I can't really have what I really want. I can maybe come close, but I might have to settle in some areas. And I'll tell you, while I'm talking about it now, it feels very vulnerable, a little bit raw, a little bit scary to put out there on the line, because I really feel like what I received today was an understanding. I can have everything I want, everything, even down to the littlest detail that, I'm in a relationship and he does the toilet paper roll thingy going under, just like me. I can have everything. Now, I will say, just for those who are listening who may go, she is so like rigid and crazy. I'm very flexible. I'm very compromising. I'm very willing to adjust, change my beliefs about things. But there are certain inherent preferences that at this stage in my life, they are my preferences. And chances of some of my preferences changing might be slim. And so it's kind of like, I really want the things that I want. Another, for example, is I've been thinking about how, at some point in the very near future, I'll be exiting my day job. And I've always had somebody in a working environment that I felt I had to please. And if I didn't, I always felt that there was just a little uncomfortable thing going on. And I'm not so foolish as to think, well, just because I go into a self-employment scenario like I've been in before, that I'll never have that. Because even when you're self-employed, you still work for people, you work with people, and there can still be people that drive you crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not that nuts. But it's like I really want things to have a smoother, more pleasant way things go down. And I was thinking about all of the times I've had things that have been uncomfortable. Each one of those was actually me sending out a rocket of desire for what I prefer. And I today for me, this has kind of been a day of not reckoning, but maybe where I'm reconciling with, hey, Wendy, you do have preferences and it's okay to want them. I don't have to give in to everything to make other people happy. I'm entitled to having things I want.
How about that?
I know. Very cool.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing today in my dialoguing with my inner being was how oftentimes my dialogue, the input I get from my inner being is yes or no. But this time I felt like I was getting full phrases because they were coming from references that I have in my life. And that was very fun. That was a new level of communication that I had today. Yeah, and that's really what I wanted to share.
That's really the breakthrough, that you got you are now getting more detail than you got before. It was great just to get yes and no. I'm not even there yet.
Right.
So that you were getting that was fantastic. But now it's almost, not quite, it's almost becoming conversational.
It is. And I wish I could tell you all the phrases that came to me, but if I were to put a number to it, I'd say I probably got at least 15 references to other somethings where they were full phrases or sentences or complete ideas. So I felt like my level of communication with my inner being really took it to a new level that I've never had before. And that was pretty darn exciting.
I should say, yeah. That's pretty strong. Wow.
Okay, there's something else that's coming back to my memory. This is kind of in a dream sequence. I was working with a client, and it's not a client I actually have, but I was working with a client, and we were sitting in her kitchen, sitting at the kitchen table, and she was talking about feeling unworthy. And she gave me all these stories of how she doesn't feel worthy, et cetera, et cetera. And I said to her, I believe that I'm going to tell you something that is going to completely break through the unworthiness factor, and you will never feel that again. And I said, but you have to be ready for it. So that's my question. Are you ready to feel completely worthy? Because that's where we're going to go. And she went, yes. And just as I was about to deliver what I was going to say, she looked out the window and somebody pulled up, and all these people just like bombarded they were like family members. And she now had kids and adults and everybody running all over the place. And I had this awareness, she's a little resistant to actually receiving her worthiness. And I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. So eventually everybody in the house goes and does something, and now it's back to just her and me. I said, are you ready now? And she said, I am. And what I said to her is, worthiness has never been a question. It never belonged on the table. You came into this world as a worthy woman, and that's it, period. It was a given. Just like you got born into this world and they called you human or they called you female, worthy is in the same category. It's a given. And she was like, whoa. Well, at that point, the dream morphed and it went to me. And I went to my website stuff that I worked on yesterday, how I said I was finally coming with my power face and coming from a place of authority of this is who I am. And I felt that the conversation I was having in the dream sequence with my client was my inner being validating, Wendy, you are worthy of getting everything you want. It is not a deservedness issue. Because, a lot of people, including myself, will say from time to time, like, well, do I really deserve to have a great relationship? Do I really deserve to have the house of my dreams? Do I really deserve fill in the blank? And I felt like that was my inner being's way of saying, yes, it was a given.
So this dream sequence was actually a rather drawn out way of your inner being communicating to you, you are worthy. But yeah. There's one question I can't figure out where this fits in. What was the deal about all the people showing up just as you were about to deliver the message to this hypothetical client, this dream sequence client?
Oh,
what was that all about?
That was her resistance to receiving this news that she's worthy.
But the point is that this is your dream sequence, and the purpose was your inner being giving you a message. So I would think that has to do with something to you, and I don't know what it has to do with.
I mean, that was kind of showing me how I have put up roadblocks to sabotage my own acceptance
That's
of my
straightforward.
worthy ability.
Okay. Worthy ability.
There's a new word.
Yeah, okay.
My
so
worthy
another
ability
word for the lexicon, a new glossary word.
Yes, my worthy ability of receiving everything I truly desire.
Okay.
Because I was somehow putting it into that category of, but what makes me so special that I would be worthy of this? And so, all those people coming in was just showing me how that was resistance, but now she was ready, just like, yes, now I am ready.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, this is a lot of information that I took in today, a lot of insight. My ability to completely believe it is not 100% there. What I sense is that it's something that requires me thinking about it a lot so that it can become a more solid belief. In NLP, we call this conditioning, which is where when you think on something over and over, you condition that thought so that it becomes more solid. And, in Abraham speak, it would be that's how you turn a thought into a belief.
Right.
You think on it over and over until it becomes very believable.
Yeah.
And so I'm enamored by the idea that I really can have what I really want. And then there's a sense of, okay, now other than in the man area, what is it I really, really want?
I was wondering when you were going to get to that. I really did. Seriously, that's what I was wondering all this time.
I don't 100% know what I really want, but I do want things to come with a greater level of ease, and I want to be able to breathe deeper. And I mean that literally as well as figuratively. I want to be able to really enjoy and take things in, where you just have that sigh of awe. And I know that that's even part of that kind of came into my awareness. The other day I was watching, I've been watching this 2-hour show called Drain the Ocean. And these oceanographers are figuratively showing what the ocean floor looks like if there were no water, so you could actually see it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so fascinating. There are higher mountains on the ocean floor than there are that you and I know about, like Mount Everest. There's bigger stuff under the ocean. And as they've gone down really deep, like one vessel went down like 30 miles under the water's level. And they saw sea life they'd never seen, they'd never categorized. They were like, whoa, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
They found coral that was 12 stories tall. And I mean, just amazing things. And the reason I bring this up is because I was in a sense of awe. I was in a sense of, oh my gosh, there is more going on that we know nothing about than what we actually know. Mm. Which kind of reminds me of the phrase, the more you know, the more you really don't know.
Yeah, right.
And the more you don't know, the more, I mean, it's just like, it's mind boggling. And there was something about watching this program, and it's 2 hours, and I've never just sat for a whole 2 hours to watch it. So far I've seen it in 3 pieces, and I still have 30 minutes to go. I have just been connecting with it in a sense of, I want that level of awe and wonder to be something I live in. Mm. And I don't know if I've ever had that to that level, but it's like, I want to live in a state of awe and amazement for the beauty of the world we live in and the complexity of it. I mean, I was just so drawn and taken by how complex our whole ecosystem is. I mean, the fact that they're finding stuff this far down in the ocean beds that they never knew existed just kind of like allowed me to take a step back and go, I'm source energy. Right now I'm in a physical form, but who I really am is still in source energy, non-physical form. I have been a part of the design and the creation of all of this. And that causes me to be in a state of awe and wonder. And it takes my breath away and causes my whole being to relax as I go, whoa. And that feels really good, Walt, for me to be in that place.
Interesting thing, too. I don't know if you noticed it. On the one hand, you talked about wanting to be able to breathe deeply. On the other hand, you talked about your breath being taken away. That's interesting. I'm not sure what to do with it, but it's interesting.
I heard it, too, when I was saying it. But it just, people talk so much about, how the beauty of a sunset or the beauty of a flower. And I don't want to say I've become jaded, but I think I've taken my focus off of those kinds of things for so long while I've been busy learning and training and, being this fabulous coach, that I've taken my eye off of some of the simplistic things. Well, they're not really simplistic, but just some of the beauty that there is available for us to really connect with, because life is so busy that I'm busy doing busy things. And I'm not going, whoa, look at this incredible, whether sunsets or whatever it is. And so I think this show, Drain the Ocean, just really took me into a very deep part of existence. I mean, even like there's volcanic action going on in the ocean all the time. Mm-hmm. Now, I knew there was like a volcano that did that off the coast of the Big Island of Hawaii because I've seen it. I've done, the helicopter tour over it and saw it, and it was pretty magnificent. But I guess it never dawned on me that there are hot springs, some of them they called mud springs, and then volcano mountains under the ocean. And I'm like, so where's the volcano coming from? Well, from the core of the globe.
The planet, right?
And I don't know, it just kind of connected me to the wholeness of, maybe not even a full wholeness, but it connected me to a deeper part of our existence. Mm-hmm. And it just left me feeling awestruck.
Well, it's pretty cool. I mean, actually, I didn't have anywhere near what you had with your dream sequence today. I mean, mine was much, much shorter, and it's a good thing because if it was as long, it would take a lot longer than we have in an hour. But the point is, I had this one little sequence happen, and it was in the context of a larger story that I really don't want to get into. But in this one little slice of time, I found myself looking at the question of just how wonderful life really is. How wonderful is life? And every time that I do that, certainly in the last few years I've been doing this, whenever I do that, I start with one thought. And that thought is, scientists, nuclear scientists, quantum physicists have been able to identify that it is possible for an electron to be in two places at once. And they've actually mapped out how that happens. And I use that as like a springboard whenever I want to regain my sense of wonder about the universe. An electron in two places at once. That's just mind-boggling. By our traditional standards, that's impossible. That can't be. And yet they've demonstrated that, yeah, it can be. What that means to me is all of the things that I thought can't be, can be. So if I thought that it was impossible for my thoughts to create matter and to generate matter that is in similar vibration to what my thoughts were, what I now know is, yeah, it actually can be. And if I thought that once a piece of matter has been created as a table, that it can't transform into something else entirely, the answer is, yeah, it can be. And most of the time my mind boggles when I try to look at these things like this. Because, how can a table not be a table? It's a table. But nevertheless, there's the recognition that if you can have an electron in two places at the same time, then literally anything is possible. It's just a question of how far are we willing to stretch our mind? How far are we willing to stretch our beliefs? Because our beliefs are not only what become the focus of what we attract, but they are also very often the basis of the limitations we put in place for ourselves. One of those limitations being a table is always a table.
Well, and if we consider that ourselves in our physical form and ourselves in our non-physical form, that's us being in two places at once.
It is, yeah. I'm still amazed by that idea of my physical being and my inner being. We talk about it now regularly on the show, but I still think about that. There are two aspects of me. There's the inner being, the non-physical part, and there's the physical part, the part that I just know regularly and look in the mirror and see, hey, there he is. Two aspects of the same being. And then if I'm in alignment between those two beings, I feel good. If I'm out of alignment, I don't feel good. When I'm in alignment, the good things happen in my life. All of that is just, wait a minute, inner being? Hold on a second. It's almost too much for the mind to handle. And yet, to the degree that I can handle it, that's the degree to which the wonder comes in. Because, wow, just amazing what the potentials are, what the possibilities are. They are literally endless.
And then if you read in the Seth books, Seth talks about how our non-physical self is also in multi-dimensions.
Oh, well, that part just drives me crazy. That's like trying to visualize multiple dimensions and, to the nth number of dimensions. And I can barely handle 3 or 4. 25, forget it. I'm done.
So then it makes me wonder, am I a polar bear somewhere else right now? Because I sure am drawn to polar bears in Alaska. And I'm wondering if part of me is also a polar bear in Alaska catching a fish.
I have no way to answer the question other than to say, sure, why not?
Anything is possible. And who knows, maybe another part of me is down in the ocean bottom being one of those species that, human scientist has not yet discovered. Maybe.
It gives new meaning to the phrase, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there, does it make a sound? If a species exists at the bottom of the ocean and no human has seen it before, does it exist? And apparently the answer is yes.
So,
or another way to look at the same thing, perhaps it appeared, maybe the species became apparent the moment that a human being was there to observe it. Who knows? It could be either one.
Well, why would we think that we know everything and that only the things that we know about exist?
Oh, yeah. It's like what you said earlier on. The more that we learn, the more we realize that we haven't learned anything. The sheer volume of stuff that could conceivably be learned is monstrous compared to how much we've actually learned. The potential is truly unlimited, which can be both devastating and can both be it can be exciting at the same time. It could be both. It could be like, oh my God, overwhelming, or oh my God, where can I start? It could be either way.
So there's a story that Abraham tells that just really tickles me. And I've heard it on, a CD where there was somebody sitting in the hot seat and they were talking about global warming and ecological things. And she was just so worried about polar bears going extinct. And she's like, I heard based on such and such, research that, the polar bear numbers are diminishing and we're going to lose our polar bears. And she said, it just worries me like you wouldn't believe it. It gets me so upset. And Abraham's response is, well, how do you not know that those who are looking for the polar bears have been able to find all the polar bears to actually get an accurate count? And I thought about that. And then Abraham went on to say, there is no extinction going on with polar bears, but polar bears don't always want to be counted. They sometimes want to be without human connection.
Most of the time.
And they know where to hide.
They do.
They know where to live where humans don't go. And I was like, wow. That opened up a whole new thought process for me.
I'll take that a step further too, because what she was doing is she was dealing with her fears. It really had nothing to do with the polar bear population. It had to do with what she was fearing, and ultimately what she was attracting unintentionally. But she was attracting more reason to be afraid, if you will. Well,
right, attracting more media and more news and more statistics.
Yeah,
that said, hey. The polar bear numbers are
disappearing.
Going down.
Blah, blah, blah. So clearly that was going on. But the main thing here is that there was fear. Fear was driving her entire session. And the funny thing is, not funny, the enlightening thing, or the noteworthy thing perhaps, is that the moment that the fear, that you remove the fear, that you take the steps to take the fear out of your thought process, is the moment that you begin to realize there are more ways than I can possibly comprehend for the things that I want to have happen to come into existence, and for the things that I don't want to have happen to go away just because I stop focusing on them. I mean, there's literally no way for me to calculate all the different ways that the universe can deliver more polar bears when I want more polar bears, no matter what the statistics say. There is literally no way to calculate that. It's beyond our human ability to calculate. And yet, there it is. It does happen. It's part of the way things work. So fear is really just fear. There is nothing to it other than I'm afraid.
And I'll add to the whole polar bear thing, because I adore polar bears. They will choose to be here as long as they choose to be here.
As long as they choose to be here, yeah.
That's what I believe. And I've also heard somebody else in a hot seat asking questions about dinosaurs and the prehistoric animals that we no longer see anymore. And the question was kind of leaning towards, like, what did we do to kill them? Or how did they die? And which had a very, like, dark connotation that something destroyed them. And Abraham's perspective was very opposite, which is, well, why do you think that something bad had to happen? Dinosaurs have consciousness. And when it was, like, let's say the specific dinosaur, we'll call dinosaur A, when he came to the end of his life and made a transition, he transitioned. And what if they as a species decided they wanted to do something else? And so when we talk about extinct, we think about it in such a destructive connotation, but we don't think about it from the perspective of choice. Every living thing has consciousness, and every living thing has choice.
Abraham likes to be very disrespectful of the concept of death. And when you talked about the dinosaurs, it reminded me of one of my favorite cartoonists, Gary Larson, The Far Side. He had a wonderful one-frame cartoon on why the dinosaurs went extinct. And you see a picture of a bunch of brontosauruses and stegosauruses and tyrannosauruses and so forth. They're all smoking cigarettes. Just to give you that laugh, to just shake it off, like, well, why am I even worried about that?
That would be a good Surgeon General's kind of warning.
Right.
tell you, it actually gives me great feelings. I mean, I like the feeling of knowing that things don't go extinct. They choose to morph into something else when they come back and do something different. Like, okay, we experimented as dinosaur species A. Okay, that was fun. Now what's next?
Yeah.
And who knows if they didn't come back as the wonderful sea creatures that we don't yet know about because they wanted to experiment coming back in that form.
And more importantly, what's the point of getting all worked up about whether or not they're going extinct? Why is that something for us to get so worked up about? Because that's the question that never really gets answered. It's always assumed, oh, we should get upset. We should get worried. We should be, prepared. We should be looking at this stuff. We should be worried about it. Why? What does it get us? What does all that concern and worry and frustration and angst actually accomplish other than to put limits on our beliefs and prevent us from getting what we want in life? It's actually a rather lousy trade-off, really.
So I just wanted to mention that last paragraph that you said kind of made you sound like you were underwater. So I wonder if you're part of my Drain the Ocean program now. To illustrate it. I mean, I heard what you were saying, but there was a in and out quality.
Actually, I think I heard the same thing when you were talking too, so there's probably something going on with the computer. The computer is probably wondering why we're talking about extinction.
Well, and now, for me, these two thoughts connect because we're talking about things that go extinct. But I've also heard Abraham, okay, let me just say this. The things I love to hear Abraham say help to disband myths, and that to me is a good thing. And so one of the things I've heard them say, somebody was talking about how their loved one, was dying of some disease. And what came from that conversation was saying, what some people, some animals choose disease because they're ready to go, and that to them is the quickest way that they could create it.
Okay.
And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. That's really interesting. So we often think of somebody dying of cancer as a bad thing, but what if somebody was ready to move on to their next whatever? What if they were ready to transition and cancer was the quickest way for them to do it?
I think what happens too, I mean, we're kind of running out of time, so we can't go into great depth about it, but I think what really happens is whenever we hear or talk about stories like this, what we're really doing is inserting our own wishes in there. If I'm in the middle of that, I don't want it. Or even people, like you mentioned, cancer, people who've died from cancer or were dying from cancer, and they didn't want to die. They wanted to live, So why am I dying and all that? I think the message that I want to take away from this is we always get to choose. We get to choose all of it. And, sometimes the result can be checkmate. We checkmate ourselves. The good news is the road goes on forever. So even if we do something that ends up terminating our lives before we wanted to, it's not like that's the end. There's the next step, the next thing that comes after that. What is that next thing? I can't say. I mean, that's one of the things about being here in the physical world and being focused here. We really don't see a whole lot goes on in the non-physical. I really don't see what happens a lot with the next step. But it's there. That much we're assured of. It's there. It's definitely there, and it continues. The road goes on forever. That's the way I look at it.
But our show does not.
It doesn't. No, unfortunately. Once again, we're out of time. Fortunately, it does come back, and we hope that the next time that we come around, you come around too, because that's what keeps it all worthwhile. Wendy, it's been a pleasure. Hope you have a great weekend, by the way.
I did. I will, and I'll be back on Monday.
And I will as well. We'll see you next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye for now.